Security seems to be on our mind these days, particularly since 9/11. In fact, we have become a culture oriented around anxiety and security. And I'm no different. In our last 3 houses, the first thing I installed when we moved in was an electronic security system, particularly when we moved into bad old Ghent. Gave me peace of mind. Not that I was afraid of someone breaking in and stealing our valuables while we were gone, because quite frankly, we don't have much worth stealing. But my anxiety was over safety. Of someone breaking in was my fantasy while we were there, maybe asleep at night and doing us harm, and even more particularly harming my wife and child when I was away. Every night before bed, I'm very careful about checking all the doors and setting the security system. As I said, when I go to bed and I know that security system is set, it gives me peace of mind. Well, security systems, I think, for me, are symbolic of this post-9/11 world, and this world which seems to be increasingly fearful and paranoid, and part of me is deeply grateful for these security systems. I remember the security system found on El Al Israel Airlines when I was checking in and I was interrogated by a security officer for 20 minutes. They say El Al has the best security going. In fact, that was a number of years ago, and looking back at the passport photo of me then, a few weeks ago, my wife, looking at the jet black hair and full beard, said that it was no wonder they questioned me for 20 minutes. Yes, security systems. Our security systems are more than electronic. It seems like one of the driving forces right now is the bottom line. Financial security tops everything, particularly after 2008. When we feel more financial insecurity than security. We want financial security to carry us through, so we can place many of our assets in what we call securities. We want security for our children. We're thinking about that after all the school invasions and the killings. And we want security for ourselves because increasingly longer news commentaries and news hours that turn into news multi-hours in the attempt to find news and more news are painting a portrait of a world that is increasingly frightening and in which each of us can read great vulnerability. My trainer told me recently that he had just received a concealed weapons permit, both he and his girlfriend. It makes me feel more secure, he told me. Well, in some ways, we're not any different than the days of Jesus. In Jesus' time, in that occupied country, a much more fragile time than our own, as hard as that is to believe, security was also on everyone's mind. Security was found in the extended family unit and in one's tribe. One's family and tribe created that economic and physical security, as well as that kind of more elusive security of identity and place and acceptance. That security of home that we're all yearning for, that place where we can feel at home. And in Jesus' day, literally, life without secure family and tribal ties meant you were a nobody, with no standing, no income, no resources, no protection, no place, no home. In his letter to the Philippians, the Apostle Paul describes himself in terms of this security system, naming all those elements of that he was circumcised as a good Jew, He was of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, a Pharisee. And before Christ, that was his security. That's what made him a person. That's what gave him peace. It also made him a terrorist, because the downside of that is when we become so focused, when we step across the line and we find that security and safety become the primary focus of our life and journey, said Paul, we become slaves. We leave the values that make us human. We live in a fight or flight mentality, and we never follow the ways of the heart. Our souls get neglected. The things of beauty get set aside. To do something because it is, to make something simply because it is beautiful and adds beauty to life is, in the words of Joseph Campbell, what really makes us human. To survive is to live at a very low level. To look at that brother or sister across the divide of culture or race or tribe or family, to look at someone who might be a contender for that little parcel of what I need out of life, to be filled with envy, is to live a diminished human life, said Jesus and Paul. And that's why Jesus says, in this rather difficult gospel reading, I come to bring peace, not to bring peace. I come to bring a sword. For I've come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. And it's interesting that the word for sword is actually the word for a large knife used for cutting connective tissue in animals, to cut the cords, as it were, to cut them up for eating. The English word dichotomy also comes from the Greek word. And why is he saying this? It's rather provocative. I mean, I love my mama. I want our daughter to love us, and I want her to listen to us because we know everything that is good for her life. But ultimately, Jesus is not talking about filial relationships. What he's talking about is the security systems we build into our life to buffer our anxieties and fear. The security system of the family, the tribe, and how we cling to our security systems at all cost, cling with white-knuckled fear, family and social groups, and those extensions to our tribe and our family in this life, our economic bottom line, arms, weapons, culture. And in so clinging for security and lost in fearful times to what will guarantee that we will be safe, in order to get peace of mind, finally, we actually lose our hearts. We lose our humanity. We lose our authenticity as people. We sacrifice our joy. And we forget that life is full of abundance, and we see it only as empty. And we lose our connection to the rest of the world and to the earth itself, because all must be sacrificed on the altar of security and safety, driven by our own fears. I do not come to bring false peace, says Jesus. I don't come to bring us cheap, superficial security grounded in fear and built on the backs of others, that keeps attacks at bay and in so doing prevents us from the kind of authentic living based on compassion and humility a hunger for beauty and joy and creativity, and a justice that recognizes no familial or tribal or national boundary. Rather, I come to bring a knife, a sword, to cut away what binds us, to cut away the connective tissue, the sinews and cords of death that keep us attached to those buffers against our anxiety-ridden world, those security systems that keeps us from the real peace. In the Hebrew, the real peace is shalom, a peace built on new cords of love, a peace built on community, a peace built on abundance for all, a peace built on welcome for the stranger, a peace built in finding those outside our family, our nation, our tribe, our culture, our race, our religion, our sexual orientation, and find that they are indeed our brothers and sisters. Shalom is not peace of mind, but peace of heart that trusts in the power and love of God in all situations and carries us beyond our paranoid fears with their hunger for a security that will never happen. A couple of years ago, our daughter decided to come home for the weekend from UVA unannounced. She arrived about 2 a.m. Kathy and I were fast asleep, and coming into the house, she set off our security alarm system, and she set off our dog, Rocco, who barked his head off when he heard her coming in. Kathy and I both slept through it all. And we didn't discover she was home until we saw her car out front the next morning. So much for security systems. Real security comes as gift, says Paul, as a new creation within our own hearts. And that's what we're learning here today, is that security of love that lives within us through the Spirit, that gives us freedom, that cuts away the cords of death, and allows us to live for joy, for love, and for that peace that we can't control because it passes all understanding. Amen.